Yo, this is P-Town's finest, representing the NEP, D. Stoudemire, and y'all know what we talking about. No one's ready to deal with us.
This is CJ McCollum of your Portland Trailblazers, and you're listening to the Rip City Report with Casey Holdall and Joe Freeman. Yeah, I've never heard of these guys either.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of the Rip City Report. I am Joe Freeman, the Oregonian. He is Casey Holdall of Trailblazers.com.
Greetings, Joe. A road edition, another of the Rip City Report. Live, well, I guess it's not live.
Just say live.
Live from downtown San Francisco, California. San Francisco treat.
Yes. Speaking of treats, did you get your calf raises in this morning?
I inadvertently, yes. Via walking to breakfast and back this morning, I got in quite a few calf raises. So my in-game dunking will surely benefit from that.
Yeah, I really like to wake up, sort of stretch out a little bit, go do what you do in the morning, and then do between 200 and 300 calf raises.
Blast your calves.
Yeah.
Just totally rip them.
I'm all legs, though. Like some guys are not legs guys. I'm all legs.
It's all leg day.
Yeah, I've got nothing up. There's no muscles on my...
No musculars?
Yeah, but my legs.
Yeah. Well, you look great, Joe.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Here we are after Game 1. It was an interesting, entertaining, competitive Game 1 between the Warriors and the Blazers. And we'll get into the particulars of all that very shortly. Before we do, please give Casey a follow on Twitter at Seahold, and you can check out his fine content at blazers.com/forwardcenter. And you can follow me on Twitter at Blazer Freeman, and check out mine and my colleagues' stories at OregonLive.com/Blazers. We know a lot of you guys subscribe to podcasts on iTunes, various other wonderful podcast services. Give us a review.
Yeah,
we check them out. Give us all your love. We love you, so love us back. Should we get right into news and notes?
Yeah, let's do it, Joe.
All right.
Plenty to talk about.
The Warriors beat the Blazers 121-109 in Game 1 on Sunday, taking a one-game lead in the best-of-7 first-round Western Conference Series. C.J. McCollum went off, had a playoff-high 41 points, tied a franchise record with 27 in the first half, and Damian Lillard added 34 points. But beyond a couple of solid nights from Mo and Evan Turner did not get much help. The bench had one of their worst games of the season, I would say, actually.
Yeah, at least from a production standpoint.
Yeah.
When I was watching the game, I mean, there were definitely times where I was like, boy, that guy's not playing real well. Boy, that was a mistake there. But I didn't get the sense I was like, boy, they're playing bad. Mm-hmm. It's just that they weren't able to score, and luckily Damian and CJ were, but not a good scoring night from the bench. But again, I didn't leave that game feeling like, oh man, the bench was awful. It just wasn't enough.
We'll get into more of that here shortly. Jusuf Nurkic was ruled out for Game 1 about 2 hours before tip-off. He did not play. Terry Stotts said it's too early to say if Nurkic would play at all in the series. A little bit of suspense there with that, but didn't sound like the team was much surprised. But we'll get into that.
I thought Mo's interaction post game was good, and we could talk about that for a minute as well.
Finally, Draymond Green showed why he's the leading contender for Defensive Player of the Year in Game 1. He had an incredible defensive performance. Had two just blocks that unreal blocks that you just never see, let alone in the same game. Was all over the court. He finished with 19 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, 5 blocks, and 3 steals. Was a beast, particularly a beast in the fourth quarter. And he did pretty much everything that you either love him or loathe him for, all in one 37-minute shift.
Well, he didn't. That's it. He didn't kick anyone in the groin.
That's
so
true.
He
I guess
didn't
not
do
everything
that people don't like him for. And I mean, and really, outside of that stuff, I know some people don't like kind of the trash talking, but I don't know. I mean, while I probably wouldn't consider Draymond to be a likable character, I don't know that he's ultra hateable either. Really, I don't know. Outside of the growing kicks, which again, I feel like we've maybe talked about this before, but I remember when I was a kid, it was like the one rule among boys is you don't kick each other in that area. Like, you can do anything else, but like it was we all agreed we're not going to do that to each other. That seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside. I mean, this just might be a construct of my own adolescence, anyways. But I do remember there being a strict like, look, guys, don't kick each other there. It's uncool.
Yeah, I don't want.
I shouldn't even bring it up. He didn't do it, so it shouldn't be an albatross.
That's what he's known for.
Sorry,
now. That's his
Draymond.
MO. Game 2, Wednesday night, 7:30 on TNT and KGW. Let's talk more about the smack talk. I guess that was kind of a thing that was a big part of the game. I think it was, and it was coming from both sides too. CJ was letting the Warriors bench hear about it when he was on his tear in the first half. Draymond was letting everybody hear. I saw more people jaw with more people in that game last night than I think I have seen in any other game with the Blazers.
Yeah, well, it was like, so I don't know if it was you or Jason that asked Mo about the talk, and I've got the quote here.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so someone was like, so how did that play out? And Mo's response was, me and Draymond were talking a little bit, and then Draymond said something to Evan, and then Kevin Durant said something to Evan, and then I said something to Kevin. That's how it went. So it's like, once it gets going, I think you hear something, you're like, hey, man, come on, that's not cool. And then some other guy hears you say that, and he's like, well, I don't think that's cool. And next thing you know, you got guys drawing with each other. And, when it doesn't, sometimes it can take away from the game. Last night it added to the game, though, for sure. Like, you got CJ, like you mentioned, who is, while he has a reputation as a nice, polished young man, like CJ talks a gang.
And nobody on
trash.
The Blazers talks more trash than CJ.
No, not, and I don't think it's close.
No,
even like, which is why it's always one of those things too with Draymond and people complaining about him talking trash. It's because he has like his persona is like this kind of bad boy, whatever. And then you have a guy like CJ who people I think view as somewhat angelic in some respects, but one, he's not, and two, like he maybe doesn't get the same negativity for that, and I mean he doesn't kick people either, so that's obviously part of it as well. But yeah, both those guys going at it. It started early, like with CJ, and I think CJ too kind of came out and was. I think maybe the way CJ played and like his affect was a response to just the general notion that the Blazers have absolutely no chance in this series. And not even just, and not from the Warriors, because I think the Warriors kind of said the right things going into it. There was a story with Kevin Durant saying, we're not overlooking these guys. We played them last year. They played us tough, so we know it's not going to be maybe as easy as people are saying. But the bottom line is, literally no one picked the Trailblazers to win. Most people have them, I would say probably half have them being swept anyways.
Like we said last week, like less than a 1% chance somebody gave them.
And I'm not saying these things as like, boy, these guys shouldn't be said. I mean, those are perfectly legitimate opinions to have about this series. But just I think from the player's perspective, and especially for a guy like CJ, he reads that stuff. I mean, CJ reads everything too. Like, CJ's not one of those guys that's like, I don't pay attention to what's going on. Like, he does, and to his credit, he owns up to that as well. And so I think that he came out and was like, no, I'm gonna show, that we're better than that. And
he was on one.
Yeah, he was and
impressive.
He also credited having, those basically a week off after the Blazers clinched. So
I couldn't tell if that was him mocking that week off or actually.
No, it was not. Just because I mean, they had mentioned, I've heard from multiple players too that they were very stoked to have the time. And I don't know if you noticed too, after, I'm sure you probably didn't, and this is a small thing, but after the Blazers clinched after that Westbrook shot, CJ had posted a video of himself on IG Live where you could tell like he was like relaxing and just like, hanging out. No, I think
it was legit, huh?
Damian might have wanted to play a little bit. CJ did not want to play. CJ was 100% cool with not playing.
Well, with whatever he did worked because he was on fire, and especially in the first half. And not only that, I thought his defense, he played one of his better defensive games in his career. I thought he was phenomenal, chasing Clay around. He got some switches onto Steph too. But and really, the Blazers as a team, I would say it was one of their better defensive performances, maybe their best of the season, certainly one of their best. And it's kind of funny. You can take two things, go to one of two ways after game one. One, The Blazers, despite not having Yusuf Nurkic, despite being heavy underdogs and all that stuff, went toe-to-toe with Golden State for 3 quarters. 22 lead changes, 15 ties, incredibly entertaining game. They didn't let the Warriors... They talked for days about the whole cliche not letting the Warriors get on their big runs because that's what they do so well. By my count, last night the Warriors had exactly 2 runs, a 10-0 run and then a 15-2 run. The 15-2 run changed everything, obviously. That pretty much delivered the win for the Blazers. That was at the start of the fourth quarter. But, so you can take 2 things away from it. The Blazers played about as well as they could play for 3 quarters. Klay Thompson was terrible. The Warriors were a little skittish, I guess. So you can be, whoa, it was an impressive performance. It leaves you, I guess, feeling more confident than you did going into the series. Or you can be like, the Blazers played as well as they could and they still lost by 13 or 12 exactly. Or whatever. So and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I leave that game thinking, you know, I guess a little bit of both to have a cop-out. It's because on one hand, yeah, if someone else can come along outside of Damian and CJ and have, you know, a good game, then, you know, I think they can win a game in this series for sure, or they can win games in this series. Now, the flip side of that, though, is I don't think you can expect Damian and CJ to score 41 and 34 points in every single game. You know, I think maybe both of them scoring 30, okay, but that still leaves you, you know, 12 points short of where you got or 15 points short of what it took to lose by 12 in game 1. So, yeah, I mean, I think you felt good about the game because it was a fun game, and I hope people don't kind of, for people who would rather have seen the Blazers in the lottery than the playoffs, I hope that when people were watching that game, they understood the value of watching a fun game. You know, like, so for 2.5 hours yesterday, like, you were treated to a very enjoyable experience. Because I thought that game was fantastic. It was close, a lot of lead changes, Blazers gave them all they could handle.
Big plays by a lot of big players.
Big plays, guys having great performances.
Stars showed up.
Everyone
but Klay Thompson showed up.
And that, you know, that was a great game 1 national TV game on a Sunday in April.
For sure.
And that has some value, I think. Or I hope people think it has value because, you know, again, if as a fan, like, the only thing you care about is wins and losses and winning a championship, I mean, that's definitely one way to do it. But, like, I don't know, to me that seems like feels like you're shortchanging yourself out of that experience, you know? Like, it's like, why not have fun? And yes, it's better to win, and it's more enjoyable to win. But, I mean, we talk about process a lot. There's things to appreciate in that process as well. So that's kind of how I felt too. And I felt like if I was a fan and I got 4 games like I saw, like, game 1, I think if you're a Trailblazer fan, even if you don't win the series, you still feel okay, you know? Like, I think you feel like, yeah, that I enjoyed watching that playoff basketball. And that might not be all you want, but, I mean, again, it's something.
It was definitely reinforcement for how the Blazers had talked. They said that they were coming in confident, obviously with given very little to no shot by anyone. They still felt like they could compete, that their styles matched up well. The Blazers like to run with the Warriors, which few teams do and can do. The Blazers do pretty well at that. And just, I don't know, stylistically, it's a fun basketball game to watch. And I don't know, you wonder if you had Yusuf Nurkic, how competitive is that game?
I think it's much more competitive, particularly with the way it went, you know, because it was tied. Did the Warriors go into the first quarter with a lead? It
was tied at halftime and tied at the end of the third.
Tied at halftime, tied at the third. So you have basically a game with nothing in it going into the fourth quarter. I think watching that game, I kind of got the sense that Dame and CJ were a bit gassed at the end, which I think is reasonable. And the fourth quarter, I think, is where a guy like Yusuf Nurkic is particularly helpful, because when things start to really bind up and defenses are basically locked into every single play, having a guy in Yusuf you can dump the ball to and say go to work, I mean, it's big. That's a real nice luxury to have, particularly against a team like Golden State that doesn't necessarily have a player that's going to be able to do the same. You know, like, they're not dumping the ball into Zaza and saying, "Hey, man, go get us a bucket." So to have a guy in Nurkic who could conceivably do that, I think would be very helpful. And what game was it where, I think it was the Rockets game, where I think it was close in the fourth, and Nurkic hadn't had a very good game going into the fourth, and I think he scored like 15 or something.
He had multiple games like that.
Yeah, and again, I feel like maybe even Damian mentioned that last night, that this was a kind of game where, again, when it gets tight in the fourth and guys are kind of gassed a bit, and not that Nurkic would be tired too if he had been playing in that game, but still to have a guy that you can get something easy out of your offense with, at least in theory, I think would go a long way towards helping. And I think too, like having a guy who, does Draymond have as phenomenal of a game last night if he's having to bang with Yusuf Nurkic for 30 minutes? Who knows?
Yeah.
That takes it out of you. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd say necessarily that they would have won that game, but they would have had a much better chance. I think that's pretty much undeniable.
Well, yeah, and as to the question, are the Blazers going to need a third person to step up, and where was that person last night? That person was sitting on the bench in a suit. That person has become Yusuf Nurkic. So they were without that third guy, and you saw how that hurt them. Evan Turner, pretty solid game, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. He coincidentally moved into the starting lineup for Game 1. A little bit of a surprise there from Stotts. Mo Harkless was pretty solid. Didn't shoot very well, though. Only 1 for 6 for deep, which kind of hurt the Blazers quite a bit, but he had 11. And those were their only double-digit scorers, along with Dame and CJ. They got 9 points off the bench, and that includes a relatively fluke three-point play by Pat Connaughton at the end of the third quarter.
That was just a harbinger of what
Genius.
else they're going to see from playoff Pat Connaughton.
So there you go. A third of their bench points came on that one play.
Well, and I think what was in the first half, everyone outside of Damian and CJ, they were like 2 of 16 or something like that. Like basically, outside of Damian and CJ, no one else scored in the first half. Which, I mean, you think you guys are going to get lucky at some point in time and maybe hit a few buckets. But yeah, so CJ had 27, Damian had 21.
48 of their 56 points.
Yeah, so, and then Mo and ET both had 2 points. AC had a 3, and Shabazz had 1 free throw.
3 shots.
So that was it.
Yep, 3
right?
field goals.
And most of those weren't even from the field. So
it's not good.
That's not good. Exactly. And you're gonna have a hard time beating any team only getting production from 2 guys like that. And again, you can't expect that that's what Damian and CJ are going to do for the rest of the series. I mean, you just can't.
The Blazers were as good as they were in last season's playoffs, not because Dame and CJ played great, although they played great. It was because you had guys like Mason Plumlee having a ridiculous, game 2 or 3 against LA, whichever one that was. It's because you had Al-Farouq Aminu having huge games in different times against the Clippers. This team needs those complementary pieces to produce and to fill in those gaps, to take some of the load off of Dame and CJ, because they're not going to be able to do it all themselves. And so you're going to need a far better game from Al-Farouq Aminu, who went scoreless, missed 5 shots in 23 minutes, and looked like he didn't even belong on the court.
And defensively, too, just not the same focus and intensity you're used to seeing from Al-Farouq.
Alan Crabb, a similar no-show. 3 points, he hit 1 3 basically. It was 1 for 5 from the field. And those are your 2 guys that you're riding on the bench right now. Otherwise, Shabazz Napier played 10 minutes. Myers Leonard played, invisible 7 minutes. And then Pat had the 4-minute shift. It's like you're going to need Al-Farouq Aminu and Alan Crabb to produce something, or you're not only going to see more last nights, you're going to see more lopsided last nights.
No, they're going to turn to blowouts.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, that's a guarantee. And so I guess, to flip back to what we were talking about, a minute ago, I guess maybe, you do feel like, hey, that was as good as as good as at least 2 guys could play. And now I guess you have to ask yourself, is there anyone else who's going to step up? And, with how, again, I guess I wouldn't say bad they were, but just how much of a non-factor, basically, everyone who didn't start that game was. I mean, maybe that lights a fire under some of these guys. I don't know. I mean, it's playoffs, so you figure they're already pretty ready to go as it is. Yeah. But, I'd like to see Noah be a little more aggressive, and that's going to be hard going against Draymond, because Draymond is just all over the place, and it couldn't be more disparate personalities either between Draymond Green and Noah Vonleh. So
Boy,
and I think that plays in this series too. I think because Draymond's a guy who
gets in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has that kind of bombastic, domineering personality where he lets you know about it at all times. The other thing that is not going to happen all series is Klay Thompson going 1 for 6 from deep. He finished with 15 points, and really, he was horrible early.
I was saying, I feel like a lot of those 15 must have come in the fourth. I think
it was late. It was in the second half. I mean, he was throwing he wasn't even hitting the rim with. I think his first 2 3-pointers.
Yeah,
hit the backboard.
I remember. I think it was his second one. Yeah, like
way off.
Missed the rim by a good 4 inches.
So you're not going to get that moving forward very often. Steph was really good, but he wasn't great. I mean, he didn't have an outstanding. It wasn't vintage Steph, if you will. Durant was really, really good, hit some really big shots, particularly in the fourth quarter. And then Blazer killer Ian Clark does it again.
Ian Clark, yeah.
4 for 5, hit 2 threes, scored 12 points. But I guess what I'm saying is not only did the Blazers bring it as well as they could for 3 quarters, I know that we didn't see the best Warriors performance last night.
Yeah, going back and kind of watching that game again, I don't know that the effort was there for Golden State. I think they took the Blazers seriously, but it did seem like a team to me that was
going through the motions.
Well, not so much going through the motions, just admitting this is game 1 of what we expect to be 16 games at least.
Yeah.
So maybe, and seeing as how they've been there for multiple years now, I think there's probably a certain level of like, well, this is our first game. Let's get it out of the way. We should play well, but we're not exactly gonna have to really push ourselves. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, you talk about Klay. As we already mentioned, I thought CJ was great defensively.
He was.
Like I don't think you can just write that off as Klay having a bad game. I think
CJ
had a real large impact on that. CJ was locked in too. Like he was just a really quality game from CJ. One of my favorite plays from last night was, I think it was in the first quarter. Klay comes around a screen, and CJ is right on him, and Klay rises up, and CJ's right there and blocked the shot basically right before he got off the ground. It's like he was so dialed in, know exactly what he wanted to do, and was able to beat him to the spot. And in Klay, again, I mean, Klay's an all-star. He's a great player. And, CJ was markedly better than him last night, which is exactly what you need. The other part, too, that I wanted to mention, you were talking about Klay and Steph not having great games, is the Warriors didn't ever have like that stretch that it seems like they always go on versus Trailblazers, where like they'll hit like 3 or 4 like huge 3-pointers. Steph, do his shimmy thing and whatnot, and then the train's out of the station, and what's going to happen from there. It's just going to be a freight train from there on out.
Yeah, they answered every.
The fact that they were able to do that, and again, but they still were able to win and keep it close in the fourth. Again, it's tough to know which way to go.
Yeah. One interesting thing too, I thought the Blazers were very active defensively in the first half. They got their hands on a lot of balls, stymied a lot of their drives to the basket. 7 steals they had in the first half, which the Blazers don't get a ton of steals. So I don't know if that was a chance thing, if that was a tactical thing against the Warriors, or the styles and the pace of play is suited to that type of thing. But it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up, because that did not keep up in the second half.
Yeah, and 10 turnovers for the Warriors in the first half, obviously 7 of those being steals. And I think, and they ended with 19 or 16 turnovers for 19 points for the Trailblazers. I mean, that's about as good as you'd expect from the Blazers, particularly against a team like the Warriors, who I don't know if I'd say they take care of the ball better than other teams, but obviously they're both offensively and defensively they're head and shoulders above pretty much everyone else. So the fact the Blazers were able to do that, Portland has been on a run lately of taking care of the ball. I think we've noticed, I'd say the last month of the season,
Mm-hmm.
Blazers with a lot of single-digit turnover games, ended up with 15 last night after they went into the first half, I think, with 5 or 6. So, things did kind of start to break down. Things did break down a little bit in the second half. And we'll have to see if they can match that, in game 2. And I do think we're going to see throughout this entire series, both Dame and CJ early on force the issue. Like the idea that, well, the other guys weren't really involved early, so they're going to need to try to get those guys involved. No, that's not what's going to happen, and I don't think that's what they should do anyways. They need to lean into what they've done best, which is Damian and CJ, and then just really hope that someone else comes along for the ride.
Did you happen to catch the new Star Wars trailer at all last week?
I watched it before we left Portland. Yeah,
It looks pretty good.
it does. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. I mean, the trailer to me reminded me of just basically like an extended version of the scene in New Hope where Luke has got the blast shield on and he's fighting that little floating ball with his lightsaber.
Seeing this force
So for me, I hope it's not just like whereas whatever the last Star Wars was felt like just kind of a remake of New Hope. I hope that this Star Wars just doesn't feel like a remake of
repurposed,
half of New Hope and the first half of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, we'll have to wait to see that. But the preview did look quite good.
It did. Did you bring that up for any particular reason, Joe?
No, it just crossed my mind.
Just wanted to change the subject?
I don't know. It just came to me, and I was wondering if you had seen it.
I have seen it.
I would recommend all of the Rip City Report listeners.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite things to do last year was we all went and saw the. Did you go? Were you in Orlando? We all went and saw
Star Wars
it together. Yeah.
Was that Orlando?
It was Orlando. Yeah. I saw, but we didn't see Rogue One together.
No, not Rogue One.
We did that.
It was.
I might have gone by myself to Rogue One. Now that I think about it,
I saw Rogue One in town. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it a couple times actually.
I've only seen it once. I should see it again though. Maybe
it was at the
think
Kennedy School. I went and saw it at the Kennedy School a couple weeks ago for a second time.
Oh, good. I don't like it. That was one thing I would say when we saw the newest Star Wars, not the Star Wars stories in Orlando. I don't like the 3D.
Yeah,
it doesn't do anything
doesn't
for
need
me.
it.
And the other thing, like if I'm not sitting right in the middle of the theater, like I feel like 3D takes me out of it. Like because I remember I was kind of off to the side, and that just it throws everything off. Like I'm always looking out of the corner of my eye of the glasses where it's not to see if am I actually seeing something in 3D right now or is it just normal D? So long story short, I don't particularly care for the 3D element.
Yeah, it depends on the movie for me, but I tend to air no 3D now.
Yeah,
I go side.
I know, and they show it too on the IMAX too, which seems like it'd just be too much.
Yeah,
I haven't seen an IMAX movie in some time, but I remember whatever it was. Actually, sometime I think it was actually not one of my first dates with my wife, but definitely in the early stages of our relationship, we went and saw one of those scenic productions at OMSI, and I'm pretty sure she got sick, or at least she felt sick, but she didn't want to get sick because obviously we were on a date.
I was going to say it's a budding romance kindled via an IMAX theater, but it sounds like it wasn't.
No, I think she gutted it out. So
well, good on her.
Good for you, Bonnie.
Should we move on to questions?
Let's get to the questions. Yeah.
All right. First up, and as always on questions, we solicit them via Twitter at our Twitter handles, which is at Seahold for Casey, at Blazer Freeman for me. First up from Lexus, huge fan of the pod. Oh, good. Thanks, Lexus. Oh, he's from Ghana.
Hey, Ghana.
Accra, Ghana.
All right. International.
Hey. Yeah, the podcast knows no boundaries. Given the Warriors roster, is it bad to be content with the result and how we played? Parentheses, especially with Nurkic out. I guess it was at the crest of what we sort of were just talking about.
I mean, I think if you're a fan and that's the way you feel, great. I don't think that's I would hope that's not the way the players feel, and I think that's kind of an emotion you have after the series is over and you look back at it. I don't think that's not the right mentality to have, particularly for players. Well, especially for players in going into game 2. Yeah, exactly. Like there should never be a time where you're like, we played well.
I mean, look, last year, again, the team came. I think I was going to start to get into this a little earlier, and I lost my train of thought. But this team entered this series confident, despite what everyone thought they were going to do. And part of that, I truly believe, stemmed from last season in their series.
Yeah.
The Blazers led by double digits in games 2, 3, 4, and 5 last year. They got rolled in game 1 at Oracle, but otherwise, they didn't just hold their own. They put a legit scare into the Warriors. I believe Klay Thompson called it the closest 5-game series in NBA history. So, or something of that nature. So it is a team that believes. But after that series, how did you feel about that? To your point, you felt, not content is the right word, but you felt good about the way they played, that they held their own against, particularly at that time, a team that you thought was going towards NBA history. So how did you leave that series? Did you leave content and happy with the team and how it went? Maybe a little perspective helped you? Yes. Right now, I think you feel confident about where the team is, and you're more optimistic that they can perhaps put a threat into the Warriors.
Yeah, and for the record too, I think from the players' perspective, I think they were probably more optimistic about Game 2 after Game 1 than they are thinking we played as well as we could and we still lost. Like
Sure.
that to me doesn't feel like what I know about this team.
Well,
You know,
and
like-
also, we talk about Dame and CJ, obviously, were phenomenal. CJ especially, as we've said. Turner was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
Mo is solid. The rest of the team, as we said, they didn't play that great, so there is room for them to
Yeah.
get better. I mean, when you talk about the Warriors have room to grow, too, with Clay, I think the Blazers have... we talked about they not only need production from those guys, they can get it. They have shown they can do it. I don't know the health of Alan Crabb. I don't know how much his food is bothering him,
that's a good. I kind of had forgotten about that, and that's not
because
nothing.
While Dame and CJ sat for their quote unquote mini vacation, they were working hard,
Yeah.
like pregame and stuff like that. They went hard in workouts. Allen wasn't doing anything during his week off or week and a half off, whatever it was. So that's kind of a different situation. And we haven't really talked about Nurkic that much. I know we were supposed to. That's my thing with him. He hasn't played in what is probably 2.5 weeks now.
Yeah.
And he's coming off of whatever degree, whatever a non-displaced fracture means, a broken leg. So you're going to throw a guy out there against the Warriors in a ridiculously fast and physical series after he hasn't done any workouts, like conditioning, hardcore contact activity. You're going to throw him out there after nothing for 2.5 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I've hope I've said this, because if not, I'm sure people can go back and listen to the podcast and tell me I'm a liar. Which,
You're a liar.
If it's the case, please do. I didn't ever really feel like Game 1 was going to be all that much of a possibility for Nurkic, and so I didn't end up going to practice on Saturday before the team left. Since they had closed I-5, I wanted to pack. I didn't feel comfortable going to practice and then getting back to the airport.
Excuses.
But I was obviously following along on Twitter, for the guys who were there reporting, and Jason had put out a tweet saying that Terry had said that Nurkic wasn't an active participant in practice today. As soon as I saw that, I was like, he's not playing.
Yeah.
Period. He's just not. I think if it's another guy who's not already 280 pounds and 7 feet tall, say it's Alan Crabb. I don't think it's as big of a deal, Alan Crabb not playing for 2 weeks and then going out and playing with that particular injury. Now, granted, if it's not healed, it's not healed. But it makes a little more sense, or I could at least see that more likely than a guy like Nurkic, who, he already had to work himself into shape after the trade anyways. He's basically been all we've seen him doing is basically,
Shooting.
taking set shots. You figure that's probably all he's been doing for the most part. So he's not going to be in game shape, let alone playoff game shape. And he's still going to have whatever effects of that injury are. So it's just, you kind of start to look at the totality of the situation, and it's hard to make an argument for why he was going to play in Game 1. And, I think in a broader sense, for why he might not end up playing at all in this series.
Yeah, Steve Kerr said, when asked before the game how it impacted their game planning and was he surprised and all that, he said, no, I expected him to miss Game 1.
Yeah,
But
because,
the timeout, it was
coaches
so fast.
know.
Yeah.
Like, they're intimately aware of kind of what the process is of getting a player back on the court after an injury.
And now the question is, will he play at all in the series? Kerr says he thinks he will play Game 2. If not, then Game 3. We'll see. I don't know. Again,
I don't think he plays Game 2. I'll say it right now.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. He hasn't done anything. Again, you jeopardize a guy. It's so hard to talk about it because we don't know the extent of the injury.
And exactly, it's hard to talk about from that. And the other part too is, so, the team has been really cagey, and understandably so, about Nurkic's status, because they want to preserve whatever competitive advantage they have from the Warriors not knowing for sure if he's going to play or not. And so when we'd ask players, they'd say, well, I don't know if he's going to play or not. I'm not sure.
I think
don't really have
CJ
an
said, I
update."
know as much as you know.
Yeah, exactly. And then yesterday, post game, we're talking to players and we're talking to Mo, and asking him about Nurkic, and I think it was Jason that asked Mo. He's like, "Did you know that Nurkic was not going to play?" And Mo kind of, you could tell the wheels are turning for a second. He's like, we knew he wasn't going to play." And Jason's follow-up question was, "Well, when did you know?" And Mo's response was, "Well, a lot sooner than you guys did."
Yeah.
So the players knew too. And again, just like Steve Kerr would kind of know. I mean, same thing with players. They know what it takes to get back from injury. They know what it looks like and what the participation level is when a player is working his way back from injury. And I'm guessing that kind of what Mo was saying was that he hasn't been practicing.
Yeah.
And if you're not practicing, you're not going to step in and play in any game, let alone a playoff game.
I asked Evan Turner when he knew he was starting, and he said 4 days ago.
Really? Okay.
So Mo backed up a little bit off. He was very funny. And then he was like, well, technically we found out today, but I knew in my head that he wasn't
Yeah.
going to play.
And I don't think that they sat down and said, all right, guys, Nurkic isn't playing. But again, like the notion of they're players, they're familiar with the way things work, and they can tell when something's going one way and when it's going the other.
Kevin Higgins wants to know, my question is, why is Draymond Green so unlikable? I need a full analysis.
I mean, I can't give you the analysis. I don't like when he kicks people and then tries to claim that it's inadvertent, because I think that's Bush League. But besides that, I think Draymond Green is the prototypical player that, you love him when he's on your team because he's
incredible.
Is a dog, and you hate him when he's not for the same reason.
Well, also that too, I can tell you why he's unlikable. And I should preface it by saying I respect his game. I love to watch him play basketball. I don't have a rooting interest in anybody, so I like watching good basketball. He plays good, entertaining basketball. But he is unlikable. He is hated because of, first of all, the groin kicks, obviously. Goes without saying. Second of all, he complains incessantly to the officials. Automatic hate right there. All the time, like almost after every play. And he has never committed a foul in his career. And he talks a lot. He jaws at everybody. It is what is a significant percentage of what makes him so effective. And so it is easy for me to see why it is easy for people to hate that.
Sure. But I would counter with this. Do people hate Chris Paul?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then that ruins my argument, because I would say the same thing about Chris Paul. The only difference is, well, they hate the Clippers, but they don't hate Chris Paul.
I think some people do hate Chris Paul.
I think some people do too. But the idea that he talks junk, he's good, he's always complaining to the officials. He does. I mean, he's not as ostentatious in his non-basketball physical play, but I mean, Chris Paul pulls dirty moves all the time.
Yeah.
But people don't say, "Oh man, I hate Chris Paul." Generally, I think he's generally well liked. I mean, he's in commercials. He's one of the pillars of the league.
I think he just falls into the general Clipper hate category. They're just all blanketed together because everybody hates the Clippers.
And it could be that too. But
even
again,
Clippers fans hate the Clippers.
Well, and I kind of feel like the Warriors are becoming in that way too. And again, I don't.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess I get it. People don't like Durant because he switched teams, even though, again, go to Oklahoma City and go to San Francisco and tell me where you want to live, particularly if you're getting paid the same amount of money. So I don't. I mean, I understand why the idea behind that hatred, but I don't understand the actual logic of it. People hate. It feels like hate's too strong a word, but it feels like people have kind of turned on Steph Curry for whatever reason.
Now, actually, wait. This gets into the next question from Rip City Revival, which is, do you guys get as irritated as I do when the Warriors win against us? Because for some reason, I just cannot stand it. I think that plays into he just doesn't like the Warriors. It plays into that general growing sentiment, which started last year during the 73-win stretch, where they sort of transformed from a very likable team that plays in a aesthetically pleasing style that's fun to watch. They transformed to a team that is kind of easy to hate. You could sense it kind of late in the year that people started to hate them.
Well, and I feel like there's this broad, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and I wouldn't discuss it in any detail because I just don't. It's kind of a sensitive topic, but I feel like there's some quasi-political social angle with the Warriors that people don't really like now, kind of the notion of the affluent Bay Area person,
Stigma?
something or rather. Yeah, and like Mark Spears had an interview with Draymond Green saying that other stars don't like Steph Curry because of the way he's treated by the media, and some discussion of how partially that might be tied into, again, like cultural issues in the African American community. I don't know. Am I allowed to say the? You know what? I'm not even going to get into it. But okay. Long story short, the idea that Steph Curry was the son of a basketball player, grew up somewhat affluent, plays in a city that again is known for kind of disparate levels of wealth. There's just something that rubs some fans the wrong way.
See, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's that they win.
And that might be it too.
They play. I mean, Steph has his shimmy, his mouth guard thing annoy people. Draymond annoys people. He's an easy villain to dislike. Like, he kind of becomes their poster child. And winning breeds hate. My thing is, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Sure.
So, but it's hard to hate a team that is so fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, it's like, why did everyone take such joy in the Warriors losing 3-1 last year? Because, like, for me, like, I wanted them to win that series. I don't like the Cavaliers. So, but it seemed to me, again, like there was a groundswell of,
sure,
screw these guys. And maybe it was just because they lost, and maybe, it's always a chance to kick dirt on someone when they're down, I guess. But, like, for me, it's like, I would much have rather have seen the Warriors win last year than the Cavaliers.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on here. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. We have a couple questions from Melissa Brotherton. Is it bad to be satisfied with Game 1 given the makeup of the current team? We've talked a little bit about that.
As a fan, absolutely not.
Yeah. Ronnie Stewart wants to know, should we start Alan Crabb to get him going early?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't start. I don't think the starting lineup was an issue at all.
No, I thought the starting lineup worked, and I think, particularly with Evan Turner and you got Evan, Mo, and Noah, who all conceivably can switch on to. Well, ET probably can't switch on to Zaza, but they're not going to go to Zaza anyway. So basically, you've got three guys that can switch on to basically any one of the Warriors' kind of big four players.
Yeah.
You put AC in there. AC can't really switch on to Draymond Green. Can't really switch on to Kevin Durant. Yeah. ET can. I think you stick with that. I think it worked.
I agree. Neighbor Dan wants to know if it's more exciting to cover a Game 1 of a playoff series or a lottery pick. And then, was that the best defense the Blazers have played all season? I think it was among the best defensive performance. Yeah. And I think he's asking, covering Game 1 or sort of like the notion of tanking, and is it better to cover what we did yesterday? I keep saying last night. Yesterday, or to cover a lottery pick. I'd rather cover a playoff game.
Yeah.
Lottery, I mean, I know fans crave the draft picks. They love the draft picks. There's a lot of unknown in covering that from us. It is fun to get to know, like, prospects, though, and tell their stories, so I do like to do that.
But the thing about draft coverage, too, it always does great, but a lot of it just feels like wasted work. Like you write a story about a guy who comes in and works out for your team, and then he signs somewhere else. That's that. Like, it's like there was nothing to it. It's... And there might not have ever been anything to it, like the idea that like sometimes they bring in guys to work out against other guys. You write some kind of nice in-depth story about that guy, and it's like, look, this guy was literally here because they were interested to see how well he could do against another guy. We're not even interested in him. So the draft is fun. Like I've covered CJ's draft in New York. I thought it was a good time. I might go again to the draft this year since Blazers, as of right now, have 3 picks. But yeah, no, it's much more fun covering a playoff game, particularly And when we were talking about this last night, this is, from a media perspective, this is a pretty easy series to cover from Portland, Oregon, because it's a quick flight, it's easy to get here. You come here on a regular basis anyways, so you're somewhat familiar with the town. It's a great PR staff. Their security guards are still handsy and
worst in the league.
And I'll say it over and over again. Wherever you are at in Oracle Arena, that is not where you're supposed to be.
True.
Like one of the security guards could be like, "Hey, you need to stand over there." You will literally take 2 steps over. The security guard on the other side of you will be like, "No, you need to stand over there." Like it's literally like they've almost told them, "Hey,
just mess with
just
them.
Make something up.
Just mess with them.
Just keep people moving." So.
Okay, next up from Brody Vogue, is Shabazz Napier capable of giving solid scoring option minutes? The kid seems to rise to the occasion at times. I've been impressed with Shabazz late in the season, and he is someone that I mean, how many minutes did he play?
I think 10? Yeah, 10,
yeah, played 10 minutes. There was pretty good shifts. I don't know that he's a guy who's going to get much more than that in the playoffs. And again, I don't think offense was a problem. I just think it was just one quarter. They just got worn down. They got finally allowed that Golden State onslaught to overwhelm them, and it was pretty much all she wrote. And Draymond happened. So
yeah. No, I mean, I think Shabazz out there, particularly to play defense on Steph Curry, I think absolutely it works, and I hope he gets more minutes going forward. I am not at all expecting Shabazz to be an offensive factor in this series. Anything you get from Shabazz on the offensive end, I think, is gravy. I think you want him out there playing defense, and I thought he did a good job of it.
Just realized CJ played 41 minutes.
Yeah, CJ played a lot last night, which is the Blazers taking the day off today, as makes sense. I mean, they got 2 days off. They've played X number of games this year. They're not going to practice their way to a victory at this point.
Next up from Levi Laius, would Nurk have done anything to slow down, box out, and suppress Draymond Green?
Yes.
For sure. It would have been a much different threat to throw at the Warriors. It would have taken Draymond into a different defensive mindset where, again, he would have to be more glued to the box or down in the paint than he would. I mean, he's so successful when he's allowed to roam. I mean, that's what he does. He's almost like, I've seen the analogy like he's in the secondary of a defensive backfield in football. Like, he roams from spot to spot. That block that he got on Dame, that was so incredible. He was guarding someone on the opposite three-point line, and he sprinted to meet him at the rim. I mean, first of all, you can't teach that. That's incredible instinct, incredible skill. But second of all, he was free to just leave his man and go do that. Like, that's what makes him so special. If he's glued to Nurkic in the post, he's less able to do that.
Yeah. I do question how the Blazers would deal with Nurkic defending Draymond, and my assumption is he probably wouldn't. So say you got Noah out there alongside Nurkic. You figure that Noah's probably going to be checking Draymond, but then who is Nurkic going to check? Like,
it would be Zaza if Zaza.
Well, and my assumption is Zaza at this point is not playing.
Yeah, there's definitely a problem on that end.
Yeah, and that's kind of before I think we get too far over the skis with anyone thinking like, well, if Nurkic played, that count it. It's like it would not be as seamless as you might hope, but I mean, obviously they'd be better off with him.
And even if Nurkic does play, he's not going to guard Kevin Durant.
No, and exactly. Like that's kind of that's an odd matchup for Portland too. It's like what do they do in that situation? And they're not Kevin Durant. Like, might as well. I mean, I should go and look up what his all-time scoring averages against the Blazers. It's got to be close to 30 points a game. Like, I can't ever remember Kevin Durant having a bad game against the Trailblazers.
He does play.
I mean,
well.
and he's obviously a great player, so he doesn't have bad games against many teams. But you would assume at some, like Russell Westbrook has had bad games against the Blazers. Steph Curry has had bad games against the Blazers. Klay Thompson had a bad game against the Blazers. I can't recall one from Durant.
Let's see. Next up from Knowledge is Power. For Game 2, do you think McLillard will shoot as much, or will they try to get the rest of the team going, assuming Nurkic is still out? It's like you said 10 minutes ago. They're going to get. They should try to get theirs. The Blazers' offense starts with them, and they need them to play well so that other people can do what they do around them. And Kerr kind of talked about this last night, after the game as well, in that he asked if he needed to switch his defense to focus on shutting them down, and he said, look, when you start doubling both of them or doubling them separately, it opens things up for people to shoot threes in the corner and opens up easy shots for the other guys. Then all of a sudden you get everything else going. So it's kind of a balancing act for the Warriors of do you let them get theirs or do you try to shut everybody else, or do you shut them down and let everybody else get theirs? So, I think if you're the Blazers, you let Dame and CJ do what they did last night and take your chances.
I would say, though, looking at the box score here, do you have a box score in front of you, Joe? Don't pull it up. No, but I wanted to quiz you here. So who do you think led the Blazers in assists last night?
Probably, it was not a good assist night. I'd say it was probably Evan Turner with 4.
Evan Turner and Noah Vonleh both had 4 assists to lead the Blazers. The Blazers had 15 assists. Damian and CJ, Dame had 3 assists. CJ had 1.
How many assists did the Warriors have?
Warriors had 26.
Yeah,
so
see?
11 more. And that's the thing. They only had 3 more made field goals than the Blazers. So I do think there's probably room for Damian and CJ to maybe get guys a little more involved. But again, I think the larger point is that they need to score and score a lot for the Blazers to have a chance.
And also when Mo's 1 for 6 from deep and Allen Crabbe's 1 for 3, the team is 11 for 30 in general.
That's true. When your 2 guards are making all the shots, obviously they're not going to be able to get assists because they're the ones making those shots. But I mean, to have 15 assists on 40 field goals, obviously that means that they had 25 unassisted field goals, that's a bit high.
Yeah. Tyler Stobe is up next. It seems like the NBA spreads the playoff schedule out too far between games. Amen, Tyler. 1 day off in between makes sense, but isn't this too much? Yeah, they drag this out forever, man. It drives me nuts. We have 2 games off in between here. We have 2 games off in between the next game. I don't know why they just can't get this going, but it's all about money and TV and spacing the games out and that sort of stuff. And, for a team that's going to march to a championship, they are playing a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
So they're going to be playing now through the middle of June, or at least through early June. So from that standpoint, I guess it does make sense to work in breathers here and there, but come on, we don't need 2 days off in between games 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. We don't play game 3. Portland doesn't host its first game until Saturday.
Yeah, I think that having 1 day off between games once you're in the city is fine. And I think having 2 days off in between when you switch cities makes sense because particularly, if the Blazers were playing, a couple years ago Memphis, that's a whole day's worth of travel basically that you have to burn just to get back home. So in that regard, I understand having more layoff in between games 2 and 3. But yeah, having 2 days off between games 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4, it's not necessary.
Okay, next up from Calvin Davis, who's more likely to provide an impact in Game 2? Al-Farouq Aminu, Myers Leonard, or Shabazz Napier? Seems like one of them will have to provide something. Indeed, somebody's got to provide something, Calvin. I look at this trio of guys that you've selected, and I think you have to get more from Al-Farouq Aminu.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't get a much worse performance from him. That was as bad a game as I've seen him play in a Blazers uniform. And again, he had some huge moments both at the end of the regular season last year and in last year's playoffs. Like, he was immensely important against the Clippers.
I thought you were just going with the end of the season this year. I thought since he's been completely healthy and playing a consistent role off the bench, I think Al-Farouq's been great.
Yeah.
And he was not great last night. And he was bad yesterday. So I mean, of the 3 of those guys, he's the guy who I would expect to have a better game anyways. And he's, when you get something from Shabazz, that's great. When you get something from Myers more and more now, that's great. That's what you're hoping for in those instances. You depend on Al-Farouq. He's True. Not just like a big guy who can come in and give you some spot minutes if you're in a bind. Like, he's one of the guys they depend on. And, he didn't have it last night.
Ryan Lau wants to know, would having Ed Davis in this series help, or would he struggle to play the small ball style? How did he play last playoffs versus Golden State? I don't remember off the top of my head, but I don't remember him being a very important factor.
No.
I don't think the style of play is conducive for him having a big series. It would help for them to have some type of size, some type of versatility, to have another body down low that you can depend on. So from that standpoint, having Ed would help, but I don't think it's a series changer.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be. I mean, any large healthy body right now would be beneficial for the Trailblazers. But yeah, I would. If Ed Davis is playing, do they win Game 1? No. So I mean, it's the difference between needing a player and necessarily saying that things would be different with this player.
Right. Next up from Keith Ellingson, love the podcast. Thanks, Keith. We love you. What can the Blazers do to counter the suffocating double teams off the pick and roll we saw in the second half? Look, man, the Warriors' defense is ridiculous. And perhaps the best thing about their defense is their versatility. Their switching on pick and rolls is unlike any team, certainly that plays now, that can switch, and is next level with teams in recent memory. Like with Draymond being able to guard every position on the floor, Kevin Durant's length and activity, and then you're switching with Klay on the perimeter. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. And you hear a lot defenses or players or coaches talking about being connected on defense. Like, the Warriors to me are like the connected team on defense. Like, it's a string, and when you pull one side, the other side tightens up, and vice versa. Like and obviously having the ability to switch is integral in that. But yeah, they are a very good defensive team. Yeah, what can you do to counter it? You need to make quick passes out of the double team and hope the guys hit shots, because that's the other part too. Is that, like, if you're Damian and CJ in that game last night, and they throw a double at you, and you have the option to swing the ball to Allen Crabbe, but he's 1 of 8. I mean, at that point, you might have to make some quick calculus in regards to, is it better if I just force up a shot here, or should I actually kick it? Now, granted, that's kind of a
They would kick it.
Exactly, they would kick it. That was just a for-it example. But long story short, I mean, sometimes if other guys aren't playing well, you might be better off dealing with a double team than otherwise. TMZ Sports reporting, by the way, that Carmelo Anthony and Lala have separated.
Oh, sorry to hear that, Carmelo.
Maybe she wants to stay in New York and he's ready to leave.
Maybe she wants him to retire.
Maybe that. I'm sure she. Who wants their husband who makes $20 million a year to retire?
That's true.
That would be foolish, Joe.
Okay, we have a couple more here. Time for a couple more anyway. Joe Leeper next. He wants to know, would you bring Nurkic back in Game 2, or is the few extra days a good reason to save him for Game 3? It would be awesome and a loud moment at the Moda. That would be fun to have him Willis Reed / Kevin Duckworth it in Game 3.
Brandon Roy.
Yeah, that's... I don't think it happens before Game 3. If it happens at all, I think Game 3 is the game. I mean, again... I'm complaining about how much time there is in between games. Nurkic is probably excited about that because it gives him more time. But I've got to see him get in some workouts. The Blazers don't really practice right now, so I don't know how. I mean, you'd have to get him in workouts with young guys or something. So
we were talking about this last night too, and I don't want to get into this conversation, but it is an interesting topic that maybe we can touch on next time. Just the notion of who has the right to make that call. Some would argue that, hey, if the player wants to play, let him play. And then the opposite side of that is, no, the organization needs to look out for the best interests not only of the player, but of the long-term success of the organization. And so that's their call. And I think, there's merits to both opinions. On one hand, I think, as individuals, Jusuf Nurkic is an adult. He can make his own decisions. If Jusuf says, hey, I feel fine, I can play, I want to play, I think for some people that means that they should let him play. Now, I think obviously there's another group that says, look...
Brandon Roy.
Yeah, you have to...
Look at the other group just needs to say Brandon Roy.
It's hard to put that all on Jusuf. Because basically what you're doing at that point, if you say that the player can decide if he's going to play or not, basically, if people know that, then it becomes... Jusuf, you have to play, man, and so so all of that pressure goes from being on the organization, which is one of the points of having an organization, is to shoulder that pressure and that load that comes with being on a team, or you put it all on the one guy and say, hey, if you want to play, go ahead and play, and then you got fans questioning your
manhood,
your fortitude, your toughness, by wondering why you're not playing if supposedly it's the player's decision. So it's it's a tightrope, and then you can expand it even further out to, well, what about the agents? Like, should Jusuf Nurkic's agent be the one that makes that decision? Because he obviously has to look out for his player, both from a playing perspective and from a financial perspective. Does the team always have a player's best interest in mind? I mean, in this case, I would say absolutely, but you could look into other situations around the league and maybe question that. So there's...
Yeah,
it's tough.
It is tough. I tend to lead on the side of an organization owes it to a player to protect them from things that you're talking about, but also protect them from themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I come down on it as well.
If someone had been there protecting Brandon Roy after his knee surgery before Game 3 against the Suns in 2010, I mean, I don't know. Maybe his health still would have deteriorated. Maybe his needs would have fallen apart. But he came back 8 days after having knee surgery, and that is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, he wanted to play with a fierceness. Nurkic sounds like he wants to play, has a similar passion for that, but, you know, sometimes you have to protect a player from himself. Now, the other side is that this is the reward for an 82-game NBA season. This is where stars are made. This is where rivalries are born. This is the moment that all these players want to be in because it's the reason they play the game. So to take that from a player when he wants to play, to rob him of that opportunity, I think that's the other perspective of the side is, look, if he wants to go, you know, it's his reward. But I tend to lean the other way because I think somebody has to look out for players and the emotion. Someone has to step away from the emotion with sound reason, with science, with health.
Yeah.
And so that's where I...
And as we talked about in the last podcast, it's also somewhat informed by what kind of injury it is.
Totally.
So you had LaMarcus Aldridge a few years back with the thumb ligament, and he was able to play with that because, you know, it wasn't going to make it that much worse, if at all. What if Yusuf Nurkic plays and his leg snaps?
Yeah.
You know, like how does an organization... How would you deal with that? Yeah. Like, if he got out there and played and anything happened with that leg, like... that would be awful. Like, and it would be such an issue for the team and for the player. And I guarantee there wouldn't be a single person that was like, yeah, Nurkic needs to play, who would feel that way after that injury, you know? True. Like, and again, and the situation the Blazers are in. If this is the Western Conference Finals rather than the first round, does that change your calculus? It probably shouldn't, but
probably does.
It probably does.
Okay, last up from Gulyas Mate. Greetings from Hungary.
Yeah,
hey,
all right.
Boy, we are worldwide. That's two different countries, Ghana and Hungary, in this podcast. If the Blazers pull off a miracle and somehow beat Golden State, do you think they can win it all?
Well, I don't know what... I'm assuming that it all means the same thing in Hungary as it means in the United States. And no. I think that would be... that if they were able to somehow pull off what would be probably the biggest upset in NBA history by beating the Warriors, that takes... in my head, that takes so much effort and energy that I don't see how you move on and win another series after that.
I will say, though, if you pull off a miracle, then sure, they can win it all.
And I guess that's the other thing, too, that, you know, if they were able to, if they did beat the Warriors, then I guess you do have to reevaluate everything that you know about the team. So in that respect, I guess you would have to maybe consider it, but...
Give me some wise... articulate saying to say about slaying a dragon and then insert it right now into what we're talking about.
Oh, assuming like in post.
You slay the dragon, you get to keep the sword. I don't know.
Yeah, let me know. I guess that kind of
slay the dragon, you get to go slay another dragon.
Yeah, the teeth are yours, or
if you get to slay a dragon, I don't know.
You're the mother of dragons.
You own the fire. You're the mother of dragons.
Yeah, you get the Iron Throne.
There you go. Let's go with that one.
Yeah. See, that's what did you see the Game of Thrones trailer for the new season?
Yeah.
I mean, not a whole lot there, but...
No, and I knew it wouldn't be. They don't need to advertise.
No.
And really neither does Star Wars for that matter, but they sort of send things out for their...
Yeah, that's more fan service, than it is like...
Leave some
promotional
breadcrumbs for
Which, by the way, I had someone come to my door and try to get me to switch my cable service, which I appreciate. I didn't do it.
You appreciate that?
Well, I appreciate in that I don't love our cable service now, so I appreciate that there are other options, exactly. But like, I feel like every single time you get this pitch, they mention Game of Thrones and are like, "Oh yeah, we gotta watch Game of Thrones." I'm like, "Hey, let's not act like we know each other here, all right? Like, give me the prices. Give me don't try to sell me on."
Don't buddy me.
Silicon Valley is going to be back, and so you really don't want to miss it. It's like there's something about like that part of the pitch where I'm always like, "Come on, man! Like, don't act like you know me."
Bottom line is, you want cold hard data. You want numbers that are in your favor, where you're paying less for the same or better service.
Exactly. I don't know why I answered the door too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I saw these people when I pulled into my neighborhood a few hours before. So somewhere in my head, I knew that they were going to be trying to sell me something. Yeah, I did think that they were going to be. I thought they were going to be gathering signatures, and there's a couple things that people are gathering signatures for right now that I absolutely hate. So I was going to be like, no, I'm not signing this stupid petition because I hate both of these ideas. But
we're going to have to stop now, because if I start talking about solicitors coming to my door, it's going to be worse than me on a plane, getting all my plane grievances.
And you live in a nice neighborhood too. In my neighborhood, you can't walk around without fear of maybe getting accosted. So, but in your neighborhood, it's free reign. You got kids wandering in the street.
In the valley.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you were entertained by Game 1. It wasn't the outcome that you probably thought you might get there. You got a little excited. But have to be happy with the... I have to say, like, again, you know how I stand. I don't particularly care about wins or losses. But from my perspective and the job I do, it was an entertaining basketball game to watch. And that's all I can really ask for.
Absolutely. And just in general, too, I thought the first weekend of the playoffs, I thought was really good.
Yeah.
That Clippers-Jazz game, I thought was fantastic.
Great.
I love seeing Joe Johnson hit that shot. And to your point, I love seeing the Clippers lose pretty much more than any other team.
Bulls took it to the Celtics.
Took it to the Celtics. That whole situation is just so sad with Isaiah Thomas.
God.
Whatever the Celtics do in the playoffs, like it's just going to be under a cloud the entire time, and like in some respects you think maybe you get motivated by that, but something like a sister passing like that, like I don't know, like I don't know how you turn that into like something positive. That's just too.
The only thing that you hope is that, possible is that you keep him in a bubble for a little while to help him. That being around so many of those,
I suppose, man, if that was.
I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be devastated.
I could not do that. And that's. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be doing that. I'm just saying myself personally.
It'd be terrible.
No chance.
Yes, we definitely send our thoughts to him and his family. I don't know him personally, but that's terrible.
No, I mean, but that's just absolutely awful.
Yeah, and here we are in between games. Now we'll all go lay down and be sad.
In our separate
quarters.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You made it sound like we were about ready to take a nap together.
Well, I mean, just generally speaking.
I mean, I guess too. I don't want to take a nap with you, but I'm not. I don't want to act like we're being homophobic here or anything.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little snuggle. I mean, we'll have to talk about that off the air. Thanks for listening, as always.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll talk to you again after Game 2. Enjoy.
Take us. No kidding, it's the Blazers and we're blasting the Lakers. Force the tempo, 50-point lead by halftime. Watch Rasheed Wallace keep smashing the baseline. Go left, go right, 360 degrees. Here comes the pain, Kobe. Whipping and he's popping a three. Try and catch him coming down the court. Bonzi Wells, what a handle. It's amazing what he do for the sport. Damon Stoudemire saves the day, a.k.a. Mighty Mouse. Gonna show all of you scrubs how to play. What a show, why the Lakers even want it with us,
No one's ready to deal with us.